7:05. On yesterday's programme, the Wildlife Trust told us that turning the tide on biodiversity loss would need to involve much more than designating more land as protected. The government has said that another 400,000 acres of the English countryside will be protected as part of a global effort, the Leaders' Pledge for Nature, which has been signed so far by 65 countries. Professor Simon Lewis from University College London is an expert in climate change and biodiversity. Good morning, Professor Lewis.
Good morning.
What kinds of things would we need to do to make this pledge really meaningful?
To make it really meaningful, because it's about land and people really care about land, people have to be involved. So I think that if we can have this new land designation to be rewilding, to be promoted for nature, and to have nature at the fore, then this is about linking towns and cities to large rewilded areas, because that will give everyone access to nature. And that's what's really important.
What do you mean linking? I mean actually physically linking, because yesterday when the Wildlife Trust were talking to us, they had this idea of the wild belt, which could be 30% of pretty much any area, including people's gardens. But are you suggesting that those somehow need to be linked up nationally?
Yes, I think that they do need to be linked up nationally, partly so that people have access to nature, but also as we see climate change unfold really rapidly, species have three kind of choices. They're not choices that they have in their heads, but they're choices that they can either stay where they are and adapt to the new conditions, or die off, or move. So we're going to have to help species to move across landscapes as the climate changes.
So that is like a network of land that is knitted together, if you like. Would it be enough to designate that land and then to plant on it, or would you have to actively then encourage, reintroduce species?
It's a mixture of different things in different places. So some areas you can just leave them to rewild themselves, and many species will come back. Lots of native woodland could come back, lots of insects and plant species, but we would also need some targeted interventions, and that depends on what the outcomes that we would like. For example, in Devon, they've been introducing wild beavers, and obviously improves the flood protection for places downstream of where those beavers have been released. So we can have nature that's doing good work for society as well as for its own value.
I think when we hear the global stats on biodiversity and biodiversity loss, and they are pretty grim every time that they come out, I think a lot of people in this country would probably imagine that the large-scale biodiversity losses are happening elsewhere. You know, you'd think primarily of the Amazon rainforest and other parts of the world. And would that be a misleading picture?
It's not misleading in the sense of that the majority of the species in the world are in the tropical rainforests. So we need to protect those. But what's happening in the UK is a dire situation. We live in one of the most nature-depleted countries on Earth. We've lost 55% of our forest birds in 50 years. We've lost 97% of our flower-rich meadows since the Second World War. We have just 13% woody cover compared to an EU average of 38%. And scientists have documented big declines in beetles, bees, butterflies, moths, and ladybirds. It's a dire situation, and actually having some areas that are protected for nature can really help turn this around, but only if there's significant investment and people on the ground who live locally in these landscapes are involved in the decisions about what happens to their landscapes, because these are really loved places.
Professor Simon Lewis, thank you very much.